we have launched.
Yes, we have. Welcome, everybody, Planet Green Trees. Today is April 24th.
April 24th.
2014. Very excited to be live on the air with you to bring you what has been described by me pretty and up-to-date and informative blog talk radio that exists anywhere in this universe. And we focus here on medical cannabis and cannabis reform. And tonight, of course, is episode number 196. I'm your host, Michael Komorn, and alongside of me to bring you the most up-to-date and informative entertainment about all these things is Chad from the Birmingham Compassion Club.
Good evening. It's nice to be here.
Rick Thompson of the Compassion Chronicles will be bringing the news to us and much more later on.
I'm always bringing much more than that.
And Jamie Lowell from Third Coast Compassion warming up for his set that he's going to be doing a little later in the show. Jamie, welcome.
Hello.
Many of you don't know this, but Jamie is the producer of the show, and I say that because if there's anything you don't like about the show, make sure you call him, let him know, not me. Episode 196, we're calling it Clemency. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the Justice Department, who recently announced Wednesday their plans to overhaul the clemency and pardon process for jailed inmates, possibly leading to thousands of prisoners being released from federal penitentiaries. Also, Lansing Attorney Jeff Hanks, who has announced his intentions to replace retiring U.S. Rep. Mike Rogers in the 8th Congressional District, is asking the other candidates to join him in a call for clemency for the Lansing Seven. Lansing Seven, of course, amongst others, include Ryan Basor and Jimmy Forsberg, and 7 people that were what they believe in compliance with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act and are in federal prison under mandatory minimums. Also in the news, and we're going to be talking about charges against 37 West Michigan residents ensnared in an investigation including a group called the Medical Marijuana Team. Charges have been filed in federal court where the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act has not been recognized as a defense. And joining us to talk about all of this will be our good friends and attorneys, brother counsels, one of whom I like to call the professor. We haven't heard from him in a while, but glad to have him back on, John Chargowski. And the other, Daniel Groh, Attorney Dan Groh, West Side, Michigan, and really statewide, both of whom have been advocating, fighting for marijuana reform and medical marijuana patients in the courts. And relevant cases that they've both been involved in, specifically Dan, as of late, he's going to give us some updates on the progress of some cases he spoke about on the show a few weeks ago. Also, Chris Hermes, the media liaison for Americans for Safe Access, is going to be calling in. We'll be discussing some of the Justice Department updates, what we can gather from this announcement. Also, Attorney Jeff Hank, who, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be running for the Mike Rogers position in the Congressional District. Jeff, I understand, who's been on the show and called him many times, was the organizer of the City of Lansing's decriminalization last year.
He did, and he's also he's doing East Lansing's this year.
Excellent. I know that he laid out his agenda in his platform. I think it's pretty 420 friendly, I'd say. So we want to encourage those to listen and understand what it can only be described as the new era political candidates who are emerging to bring about change in our messy political system. And as I say all that, as we talk about medical marijuana, I'm going to rant for a minute, but before I do, I do want to keep forgetting every week, but I want to give a couple shout-outs first to our good friends Dewey and Pam. Dewey, we did, 19 hours in the car these last couple of days, and other than the one time that I began to doze off for a second, you woke me up, I enjoyed the entire part of it, every moment. Pam, thanks for making sure Dewey was on time. In fact, when I pulled into one of the outlets to meet him, and I didn't see his car at first, I was so upset, but then he was hiding. But thank you, Dewey, for helping me this week and every week. Shout out to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. Please visit the website, and I want to thank the moderators and administrators for providing a safe environment for that forum to evolve, discuss medical cannabis. Komorn Law, 1-800-656-3557. The Marijuana Rancher, 313-422-5281. Call for a tour of the cannabis Historical Museum, and of course our good friend Dr. Kumar Singh of the Green Light Clinic, 248-390-0574. We've discussed it many times. It keeps coming up, but the doctor-patient relationship is under the microscope, and you need a doctor in your corner who's prepared to come to court. Amongst the others in our often mentioned gold standard certification protocol, Dr. Kumar Singh is one. He's also been qualified as an expert in the Michigan Medical Marijuana program. Always a shout-out to our good friend and unfortunate poster people for the Michigan cannabis community, Bob Redden and Tori Clark. We know Tori is very ill and in hospice, and we wish you our best, Bob and Tori. Also, shout out to our good friend Eric Gunnels, trustee for Thetford Township. Please text him at 810. Just kidding. He's also no longer, I don't know, is he still associated with this? We're just going to say he's removed himself.
Sure, yes.
Is he okay? Never, I was going to joke about that maybe. But nevertheless, Eric Gunnels, of course. All right, so, we're having a couple lawyers on. We're going to talk about some things tonight. The topics that we're going to be discussing is clemency for people that have been arrested and are in prisons throughout the federal system, but also goes without saying that there's even more in the state system. And clemency is a policy that the federal government is employing right now, and I mean certain protocols in place. But on the show, there's our John Tchaikovsky and Dan Groh. They're going to talk about some of the other cases that are going on. We've got this Western Michigan, 37 people called the Medical Marijuana Team. Problems that are going on. I want to preface all this by saying I'm not discouraging anyone in participation, but I want to point out some of the real problems that are existing right now that make no sense. And the law, the way it's written, generally speaking, is not supposed to be a guessing game. It's not supposed to be in the criminal procedure that there is not due process or notice of what is and is not illegal. It's supposed to be clear. I'm not saying ignorance of the law is justified, but it should be, as the Supreme Court has said, easily read by the regular citizen, especially, as they've said, in instances where it's a voter initiative and it's really the voters' law. It should be written in a way that the voters can read it. This has been stated over and over and over again. And there's no question that there's been hundreds, if not thousands, of people that have been dragged into the court system, believing that they were in compliance with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, and more importantly, really, truly intending to be in compliance, never thinking that they would ever end up in court. This is different than individuals who know that they are doing something wrong and get caught. Those persons may say, I didn't know, or that's an excuse that they use what the law was. But unequivocally, they're behaving in or doing behavior that they knew was illegal and they got caught. This is not the type of behavior that I'm talking about people that genuinely believe that they were lawful, but because of interpretation of a court, because of a retroactive application of a law in the courts, which can happen and is allowed. It's not violation of due process. The legislative enactments may be, yes, but we found out that what happened in the People versus McQueen in March of 2013 is going to apply to your case from July of 2012, because you were supposed to be clairvoyant and know what the Supreme Court was going to say. In the general overview of how the Act has been applied to the citizens and the persons who enacted this law for a reason has not gone the way that many have expected. I think the interpretations that those individuals believed existed when they read the law is now being interpreted by the courts to reflect what can only be described as a plain reading of how the law is supposed to be protective. But there's been many, many ways that politics has gotten involved in the interpretation, and when the opportunities present itself where political positions can influence the law, they have taken over. There are stories in Michigan that would turn someone's stomach to listen to how badly patients and caregivers believing that they were in compliance with the law have been treated. The attitude of a law enforcement community to treat persons that are utilizing medical marijuana and knowing that there are certain ambiguities that they can always play on to find someone outside of the immunity or exemptions of Section 4. I know this to be the case because I've read enough police reports where the questions asked are in concerns of whether someone else has access to your, or pulling a wife aside or a patient aside. So have you ever been in the grow room? What is the desire? Why does it still exist? Why are we still talking about a law that was intended to protect people and how law enforcement is looking for loopholes to vitiate patients and caregivers' protections? The card was intended to provide a positive law enforcement encounter at the time and moment that law enforcement encounters patients and caregivers. I don't know that the statistics would support a 50% ratio of positive to negative encounters at Section 4. I hear a lot of very, very negative ones. I hear oftentimes patients' cards and caregiver cards being used as a basis to want to sniff around and investigate more instead of walking away, accepting it for what it is are protections for the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. And stories are awful, and I don't want to go over my limited time limit, but I wanted to talk about one particular case that has just disgusted me as of late. It's very simple, but it starts with the idea that a person who's a physician, client of mine, graduated from medical school and is interested in holistic and alternative methods of treatment and went to the city of Holly. Holly had an ordinance allowing for dispensaries. There was a business occupancy permit that was granted by the city and a special use permit to open up and dispense cannabis to medical marijuana patients. That, in fact, the entire city council approved of it by vote publicly on a record where minutes were taken. And the following month, the police chief, who was required to sign off on it, did in fact sign off it publicly, and they're included in the minutes. And at one point in time, as the building was being fixed up and made available for persons to come in, he was visited by the police department knowing what the intentions were, what the building was going to do, and they made him move because the activity that was going to take place, as it was outlined in the special use permit, was too close to a school. So we had to change the locations, move further away to a different storefront, and invest money, put money into it in order to fix it up and make it habitable for patients to come in and acquire cannabis. And he did all this with his parents' approval. He did all this with a lawyer who was representing him at the time. He did all this with the city's approval and the police chief's approval. I would not have recommended it at the time, knowing what we knew, but he did do it, and he did it in a way that was as approved of as it possibly could be. And, of course, the story does not get good at this point, and what we find out is the chief of police that signed off on it is the individual that calls the sheriff's department to come and investigate. But here's where things get interesting, and this is why I'm making this point, because I want you to understand the people that I just spoke about, my client who's a physician, supported in this endeavor with his parents who are backing him, the decision to not continue on in the traditional medical, but instead to interact with patients in a holistic and alternative way and approval by the city, approved by the police, lawyer working the whole circumstance where there's unequivocal approval. Now, I know it's not the same opinion of the state law, but moving forward, I want to explain that event, those events that I just described compared to this, that once the investigators of the narcotics unit in this community find out about it, they go and they try to acquire cannabis, but they're turned away, that they don't discuss, that they don't put in any kind of search warrants, and they go out and they get a guy who is a heroin addict and has several theft crimes on his record and has a medical injury, and he's got a card, and they bring him in and they have him purchase cannabis after he signs the owner as his primary caregiver. Not including any of this in the search warrant. Of course, they raid the dispensary, they raid his home, which they'd never even seen him go to just because they thought they could, invoking the comment from the judge, you're telling me now that if someone owns a dispensary and they've never been to the house, that police can go in there, and that's constitutional? But the point is that as we line ourselves up for what's taking place, and I think about the personalities on the side of the defendants or the defense, they're what can only be described as good quality law-abiding citizens that took every step possible in order to be law-abiding. And there was no intentions here to hurt anybody. There's no intentions here to bring ill will. In fact, they went through every single step possible to try to coalesce and become a part of the community. They had every approval, including the police chiefs. And on the other side, you've got law enforcement community that you'd think would have more important things to do than to get into bed with home invaders, thieves, and heroin addicts and use them to try to create crimes for people that are good people. And I wonder, and I'm sure we'll find out at some particular time, what the community thinks about that. That this prosecuting agency and its law enforcement officers are going to put onto a witness stand or think that a community is going to accept the fact that they've got to do this, that they're being endorsed to do this, that the idea that we want to give deals to home invaders or thieves because they can rat on and snitch on somebody that is providing cannabis to patients in a safe environment. But this one is one that is very disturbing to me, and politically and socially is the wrong direction. And I think we're going to be talking about some of these other types of shows, cases that are unfortunately running prevalent through our community. And we're going to talk about how we are going to continue to fight them. And that's the rant for right now. We're going to take a quick break. Call numbers 1-347-326-9626. And we'll be right back.